Welcome to the Jerome McClain Show. I'm your host, Jerome McClain, and let's get into our episode.
Intelligentsia, the endem of sarcasm, the nutty professor to your whack-ass marmalade. It's T-Bone from T-Bone and Chick Brew in the morning. Now available in podcast format. Simply search for the T-Bone and Chick Brew podcast, available wherever fine podcasts are sold.
Turning now to the economy, we've been trying to stick to this as much as we can. The two-tiered economy, where people, yes, the S&P 500 record high just yesterday, gold record high. So if you have some of those assets, you're doing well. But beneath the surface and behind the scenes, a lot of stuff happening for people who are making less than $100,000. Just going to put this up here on the screen. Lower income Americans are missing car payments. So more Americans are struggling to make monthly car loan payments, a sign that the lower income consumers are under growing financial pressure. The share of subprime auto loans that are 60 days or more past has nearly a high of 6.5% and has lingered near that level. Repos have swelled. More drivers are trading in vehicles that are worth less than they owe, meaning that they're upside down. And lenders such as CarMax and Ally Financial have warned investors about auto loan performance. Quote, despite stubborn inflation and punishing tariffs, the U.S. economy on its surface appeared to hold up relatively well. The stock market has climbed. Company executives, for the most part, remain upbeat, and consumers overall are still spending, but it's largely those top 10% consumers, which are the weakness is that the auto market is one of the clearest indications that lower and middle-class income families could be starting to buckle because many Americans need cars to get around. Auto loan delinquency is a telling gauge of financial hardship. That's actually a good proxy, right? It's like one of the last things that you're going to go bust on is repossessions. I'm not sure I'm not the only one, but videos of repo men literally go viral all the time. And it does feel, maybe it's algorithmic, I'm not sure, my own personal bias, but I do certainly see them go everywhere. And I think you combine that with some of the other stuff, particularly with the study we're going to do later on with David Dan. The real risk to our economy right now, Ryan, is that, you know, if you're already making less than 100,000, like you're basically not bust, but you're really struggling. And if 50% of all consumer spending is just from the top 10%, a slight pullback in that is just enough to send us into a recession.
Yeah, and what you said is exactly right. If you lose your car and
you can't do anything.
Like, you know, like a small percentage of people live walkable enough that they can get to work. It's such a that's not the situation, right? Like a massive portion of Americans. And so when you start struggling, your rent is the thing you stop paying first, maybe because it's much harder to get evicted. And then your credit card, your student loans, definitely you're not paying those. What are they going to do? Take your degree back? Eventually, you keep paying the things that you need, and you need your car. When you stop paying that, then now you're dodging the repo man. Yeah. And if you lose your car, then you're bumming rides to work. You might lose your job.
It's a very downward spiral.
That's why the bean counters look at this number because through all of that pain and suffering is an economic indicator, which is that if people are falling behind on their car payments, that means everything else is going really badly.
That's exactly right. There's another metric I track very closely. Let's go ahead and put here up on the screen. When I saw this, I said, sell everything, because this is the biggest indicator of impending economic disaster. The number of people who registered to take the LSAT in September 2024 was 18,811. The number of people who registered to take it in September 2025 is 32,170. So let's explain, shall we? What it is that anybody who is my age is just old enough to remember this, is back in the Great Recession. I mean, you lived through this, Ryan. You were entering the job market at that time. If you entered the job market between 2009 and 2012, you were dead, right? You're basically entering one of the worst wage job markets of all time. So what a lot of people did, especially those who graduated, let's say in 2009, is they said, okay, screw it. I'm just going to have to go to law school. I'm going to have to business school. Yes, I'm going to have to leverage myself with some debt, but hopefully things will have cleaned up. I'll have gained a credential in the meantime. It's kind of a stopgap measure for a lot of people. It's nice if you can afford it, but it's definitely bad if you're taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans.
Just to add to that, and then you go on. Let's say you graduated in 2005. you've been working for 2-3 years.
Right. Yeah,
you just got laid off, and you're staring at now years of unemployment. Like there was this whole thing back then, what they called the 99ers, people who would exhaust 99 weeks of unemployment. And so you're like, well, I could sit around and just suffer because like there's not, it's an extraordinary amount of suffering. Yes, to be looking for work. It's an assault on your dignity as well as your finances. And so you're like, well, if I'm going to be sitting around for 3 years anyway, might as well at least try to come out with a credential that can make me more employable down the line.
Yeah, and actually what we saw is that the number of people who took the LSAT actually dropped after the economy started to get better. So it is one of those like very good indications about how people are doing. And eventually, as the economy got better, so let's say in 2012, it fell even more precipitously. But the fact that it has such a large spike is genuinely one of those like 2009, it's the exact same thing. I'm looking right here at the statistics, substantial jump of some 20 to 40% in law school applications just in the 2009 to 2010 school year. So this is the same number. If you look at what that is, almost double actually. So it's very similar metric. It just goes to show you at the lower level of the job market, there is a crushing feeling of this isn't going to get better. And so I might as well just take out some debt and deal with it. I will also add though, this may be one of the worst times to do it because not only do we have AI, which is on the horizon, but also, for people who are out there, please pay very attention to the law. So there's something called a Grad PLUS loan. Are you aware of what that is?
Yeah.
Right. So previously,
cap now.
Exactly. So previously, this Grad PLUS loan was one of the most used student loan federal programs for medical students and for law students. Now, the United States Congress in their recent legislation has capped that at $50,000. And so there are some schools, I recently saw statistics that for the very first year ever, I think it's Santa Clara, I need to check which law school, they had their tuition at $70,000, but then the law changed and they changed it to 50. I was like, oh, interesting.
Because the 70 was kind of a fixed
it's all
price.
fixed.
Yeah.
All right. So there are two options there right now. Is that one is that, yes, maybe law school prices will drop. I am deeply hopeful for that. Personally, I think we should make the Grad PLUS zone 0, and then we'll really see what the market rate for law school is. My guess is a couple $1,000s. But the real like change here could be the Yales, the Harvards, let's say any in a T15, top 25 law school, any of those, they're not going to change. People are going to get leverage no matter what, whether it's Grad PLUS or not. That's where I get scared, for people is that they'll not only even have access to the Grad PLUS loan, you have to get a private loan. Private loan is going to have a, usurious interest rate right now. And you could really get stuck in a deep hole. And you're basically banking on an entire career that works out when you have a technology environment right now. We just don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer. I know a lot. From what I know, AI has not come yet. There's still a lot of guild checks in the system, but I can't be the only person who says, hey, especially the lawyers who I grew up with, their first 2-3 years in the industry, it was bullshit. It was like,
document review.
It was doc review. It was, working. They would, when the partners went to bed, that's when you started to work and you have to do your research and make sure that the footnotes are, it's like an investment banking. It's just pure scut work. And that's one of those where that I'm fairly certain ChatGPT could do, or at the very least, you could use it to check your work and then but the workload is going to be much, much less. Right. So that's where I really start to worry,
especially with the doc review.
Oh, yeah. That's the definition of automated, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, I don't put a value judgment on it. There are so many like fake cases that seem to have been seeded into the world. I don't know if like a Thomson Reuters or like some other.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Has anybody ever told you you were over opinionated? How about this one? You can talk about everything you like, but don't talk about religion. Don't talk about faith. Don't talk about politics. My name is Jerome McClain, host of Jerome McClain Show, and I want to introduce you to a show called Over Opinionated with my friend from Southwest Virginia, Josh Scott. Josh has always been told he has been over opinionated. He always tried to hold back these opinions, but he tried to back them up when he had to say something with facts and logic. Since he's grown up in many ways, he had to change a lot of his views and his opinions, as a lot of people should. He's not a millionaire from Fox News or CNN. He's just a work got a shot at Overopinionated with Josh Scott. You can find him on patreon.com/overopinionated at 679. You can also check him out on Twitter at NRV_guy79. Overopinionated with Josh Scott, where he is this soft-spoken guy telling you the truth. We talk about a lot of serious topics on this show. One very serious topic is women's health. One company that stood out to me was vslay.com because the owner is very transparent about her own struggles in the women's health department and has great customer service, great deals, and frequent sales. You can check her out, her great customer service, products about women's health, and frequent sales at www.vslay.com. That is www.vslay.com.
Of these companies that you have to pay to get access to their cases are like genuinely like seeding the world with like fake cases, the way that like hippies would put like a spike in a tree.
Interesting. Yeah.
Something is going on that is putting in all of these made up, completely hallucinated cases that then AIs are then writing into their memos that they're writing.
Wow.
And judges are coming down hard on them, saying like, oh, this is clearly AI, you're sanctioned, you're fined. So at least you will need humans to like read the AI briefs and then actually go and check the cases to see if it's not hallucinating.
Well, you should be checking it anyways. I can't tell you the number of times that I'll use ChatGPT for research. And I'm like, wait, that's wrong. I mean, like, I know that that's wrong, right? It's one of those where, and then I'll say, hey, that's wrong. And they're like, oh, you're right. It is wrong.
If you work at like Thomson Reuters or one of these other places, reach out to me because
oh yeah, I actually that would be a great story.
And if I were them, I would do it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, why not?
Be like,
protect your business.
And Jenny versus Grimm is this powerful Supreme Court case, and you can put it somewhere where the AIs will crawl it, but nobody else can find it.
Yeah. My dream is to get my name attached to a landmark case on Maryland. Enjetti versus the United States. Enjetti versus the state of Colorado. So my name can live forever. All right, let's go ahead and put this one up here on the screen.
I need my Enjetti rights.
Yeah, the Miranda rights, Enjetti rights. The Enjetti right to, there was actually a huge case here in Washington, D.C., where a woman sued her neighbor for smoking weed and won, actually, and won. She is my personal hero right now. So the home sellers now outnumber buyers. But was not adjusted, right? So even though the seller for smoking weed and won, actually, and won, she is my personal hero right now. So the home sellers now outnumber buyers by more than 500,000. That is the largest gap ever recorded. So yeah, you know, things are scary. And the reason why this scares me is the price still is not adjusted, right? So even though the sellers are outnumbering the buyers, the law of elasticity would tell you that the price should come down. Price is not going down, all right? It's actually staying flat. And in some cases, in the big metro areas, they're going up, which I just don't understand. I don't know how it's possible, but there's something where I have said now this entire time, it feels like it has to crack, but it doesn't. And I think that's what scares me the most is we've lived through these crazy times now since June of 2020. It's been 5 years, more than 5 years of an insane housing market. Doesn't sound that long. Let's say if you're 60, if you're my age and you're 33, that's a long time. I wasn't even married with a child 5 years ago, right? Your life can change rapidly in 5 years. Let's say you're 28 years old. You're right around that time where you're like, yeah, you know, I'm thinking about it. Oh, 7% interest rate, terrible housing market. I can't afford it. I don't have the savings. Let's say I'm either getting laid off or I'm not getting the raise that I thought I was going to get. Inflation is eating away at my bottom line. Those are the people I think about the most right now.
And I think what you're looking at there is a standoff. And I think, and this is the reason that you're not seeing the prices crash yet. You have most of those sellers there have some type of 3% interest rate that they're sitting on. And so their monthly payment
very low
is something that they can afford as long as they're staying employed. And so they can wait out the buyers. Buyers are looking at a 7-8% interest rate, which sends your monthly mortgage costs, absolutely through the roof, which changes the amount of house that you can then buy. So if you're a seller and you're selling on your 3% mortgage, now when you go to buy a new home, you're going to have to take out this 8% loan.
Right.
So there's that huge gap. And so people are staring at that and saying, you know what? I need a lot more money to be able to get an equal house. And the person's like, well, why would I give you that much money when
No, I mean, it makes
it's
perfect sense.
So it's two people just staring at each other. And I think the only way this breaks, I guess eventually the force of like economic decline could do it because enough people just can't make their payments anymore. But really, interest rates have to move.
Yes, that's right.
Like,
but they're not.
You can't have this crazy world of where you have 3 and 8, like the buyers at 8 and then the sellers at 3. Like trying to find a place where they can meet in the middle is proving to be impossible. Like that's why you're seeing this record.
That's such a good point. Yeah, and a lot of people are stuck in houses that they don't even want to be in. I know a lot of them. They have like 3 children and they're like, I'm not moving. I can't afford it. I literally cannot afford to move. Let's go and put the next one up on the screen. This is, we wanted to bring it back to the shutdown. There is, in fact, a shutdown happening, by the way, if anybody's forgotten. It's actually the 4th week of the shutdown. Not that anybody cares, apparently. And so these Obamacare prices were the things that the Democrats really were zeroing in on. And there's been new public reporting now of these higher prices that are now actually revealed in over a dozen states. It says consumers are now facing greater costs for their 2026 ACA health coverage as Congress continues to debate whether to extend subsidies that help people afford their premiums. So health insurance prices for next year under the Affordable Care Act are now available. The annual enrollment period for Obamacare starts on November 1st. The costs are becoming publicly available piecemeal through state marketplaces. People shopping for coverage can now preview the costs they face from potentially expiring subsidies, sharply rising premiums in many markets, including California, New York, Nevada, Maryland, and Idaho. Man, California, New York, what? That's a huge portion of the entire U.S. population. Based on newly published information, a family of 4 making $130,000 in Maine would face an increase of $16,000 in annual premiums just next year because they would no longer qualify for generous subsidies. And that is from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. That's devastating, $16,000. That's after-tax income.
That's one of those where you read and you're like, that can't be right.
Right.
That has to be wrong.
That's huge.
An increase of $16,000. And like you said, after tax income. So the family of 4 making 130, 135.
Well, I guess it's technically taxed about, whatever. I'm not an accountant. But yeah.
Still. Yes, you can write that off. That's true. But your income is not, your actual income is going to be more like 100, even though you can write a lot of that off. But that's brutal. And so what's interesting here, let me read something from a related report, which says, so the expiration of enhanced tax credits will lead to out-of-pocket premiums for ACA marketplaces always increasing by an average of more than 75%. This is the doubling that you keep hearing about. So they're guessing it won't be complete and total doubling, with insurers expecting healthier enrollees to drop coverage. That in turn increases underlying premiums. So just to make sure everyone's clear on what's going on here, we're going to double the price almost of these exchanges. A lot of people are going to look at that $16,000 price tag that they're facing for next year, and they're going to say, I can't afford that. It's not even a choice of whether or not I want to buy this. I don't have the money for it. So I'm just dropping health insurance. Insurers have already gamed that out. They know that they're estimating $2 million for next year and then increasing as it goes on. Okay, so it's the healthiest people who are the most likely to say, you know what, I'm not, family's going to have to go no insurance this year. And so if you lose the healthy people from the pool, you then have to charge everybody else more. So not only are you losing the subsidy, which is driving the price up 75%, they're estimating, because they're already forecasting, 2 regulators, that they're going to raise the underlying price by 20%.
Yeah.
That is a year-over-year increase that is utterly unsustainable and insane.
Right.
20% in 1 year?
It's horrible. But, I keep coming back to what Crystal said with Corbin Trent,
This is a devastating point.
This is a devastating point. The whole fight is we can't afford to go back to normal Obamacare. Well, if this is normal Obamacare, this sucks.
I said it at the time.
Yeah, it's like, this is horrible. Yeah. This is horrible. The only reason people signed up were because of pandemic era subsidies for health insurance. And now that it's reverting back from people who are like, whoa. I'm like, I didn't know that this is what the normal program was. And that's actually kind of a Republican talking point, which is not incorrect. It's like, if this was the normal marketplace, then what the hell are we doing here? I got some of these older figures I got in Kentucky, a 60-year-old couple making $85,000 will face an increase of $23,700.
But they make $87,000, and their increase is a quarter of their
$23,700. I'm rolling the dice till I get Medicare. I mean, personally, right? If you're healthy, I'm like, let's roll the dice.
Right.
Don't take any buses. Don't go across.
And that's what they expect people to do.
Yeah.
So costs are going to go through the roof. The best thing that people said about the ACA at the time was, well, this is the first step and they'll fill it in with subsidies. And then they did, and now they let them go. Now you have to fight to get them back. Yes, it's utterly absurd. It's outrageous. And it shows why you need universal coverage. Because without universal coverage, the healthiest people aren't in it, and then everybody else pays more. So yeah, the politics play an interesting role here.
Yeah, this is really what I want your opinion on, because it does look like the Senate Democrats are going to cave.
Right, because so if you're just listening to this is Andrew Destorio, Senate reporter, saying, are Senate Dems eyeing November 1st as a shutdown off-ramp? Dems think they can argue it's no longer feasible to address the expiring ACA subsidies legislatively and make GOP own the resulting premium hikes. No decision yet. This idea is picking up steam. So, in other words, saying, okay, well, the exchanges open up for business on November 1st, and this is what we're fighting for. So if we get past November 1st, we can then save face and say, okay, look, we tried. We tried to save Republicans from themselves. We tried to stop Republicans from doubling your health insurance costs. They refused. Now they're doubled. It's done. Let's open the government up. And then you've had, was it Thune yesterday saying, I will negotiate, and what Republicans have been saying is we will negotiate around these subsidies, but we won't do it with a gun to our head, which is hilarious because it's like the exact reverse of what the party said during the last shutdown. There is no principle in process ever. Like, don't, if anybody claims that they believe in the process, they're lying. They don't. They just believe in outcomes. So in the previous case, it was Democrats who said, why can't you negotiate with the government open? Because Biden was president.
Yes.
Now it's Republicans saying, why can't you negotiate with the government? It's Trump president.
Because Trump is president. Right.
And that's all that matters. So Democrats could say, all right, look, we tried. And also, from a cynical perspective, Schumer, I don't know about Schumer personally, but Democrats in general, they're personally, you know what? If Trump wants to hurt 20 million people and let the whole country know that he's doing it to them, then let him do it. Then let him do it, and we'll reap the political.
Yeah, but then why'd you shut the government down for a month?
Because nobody would have known otherwise. Like, they would have gotten their increase and been like, oh, this is terrible. But like, life sucks.
Yeah.
Now they can say, look, we told you Trump was doing this. We fought for you. Trump fights against you. That check you're writing, remember Donald Trump's name while you're writing it. So that's their theory.
I could see it. It's just a little weak. It's like, if that's the political calculus, then keep the government shut down. Okay. I mean, because again, and Crystal's made this point, I'm sure you agree with it. If you ask those no kings people, yeah, there are going to be some signs about Obamacare. That's not what they're mad about, right? They're mad about ICE. They're mad about all this other stuff going on, right? So for them, they're like, screw you. Why should I fund you? You think these ICE agents aren't getting paid? Fine by me, right? For a lot of them, they're saying there's no reason to fund this government. Make their life a little bit more difficult. Force them to do stupid shit like, I don't know, firing an artillery shell that explodes over the city of Los Angeles. I mean, if I'm a Dem, I'm going to take that all day long, right? Yes, it's very painful for a lot of the for the federal workers, etc. But pawns have to be played in the field of battle.
The problem for Democrats is that Republicans only have to peel off a few, and they're good.
Okay.
So yeah. Democrats as a leadership can want whatever they want, but if Republicans can get a couple, I don't know. We'll see. But November 1st is, it's still a ways away.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see, Ryan. I'm very curious.
It's a peculiar asymmetry in American political discourse. The most powerful nation on earth, commanding resources beyond the dreams of ancient empires, has spent the better part of a decade in paroxysms of fury over which bathroom a statistically negligible fraction of its population might use. One might think this absurd on its face, and one would be correct, but the absurdity runs deeper still. This is not mere stupidity or bigotry, though both are present in abundance. This is calculation. This is strategy. This is the oldest confidence trick in the political playbook, performed with such brazenness that one must admire the sheer contempt the perpetrators hold for their marks. Let us be clear about what we are discussing. Trans individuals constitute roughly 0.6% of the American population, perhaps 1.6 million people in a nation of 330 million. Among these are people born with genuine medical conditions, intersex variations, and chromosomal abnormalities that complicate the tidy binary categories some find so comforting. They face discrimination, violence, and suicide rates that should shock any decent person's conscience. They are among the most vulnerable and marginalized people in American society, and it is precisely this vulnerability that has made them such perfect fodder for political exploitation. The Republican Party did not wake up one morning in 2015 seized by sudden concern about transgender bathroom policies. For decades, through the Reagan era, through both Bush administrations, through the entire culture war over gay marriage, trans people barely registered in Republican political strategy. They were not mentioned in party platforms. They were not the subject of legislative frenzies. They were not the specter-haunting conservative nightmares. Even the religious right, never shy about identifying new categories of sinners, largely overlooked them in favor of more traditional targets. What changed was not the trans population, they had always existed, but the political calculus of the Republican establishment. After the Supreme Court's Obergefell decision legalized same-sex marriage in 2015, the GOP found itself in need of a new cultural battlefield. The gay marriage fight had been lost, and fighting it further risked alienating younger voters, even within their own coalition. But the infrastructure of panic was too valuable to dismantle. The fundraising apparatus built on cultural grievance, the media ecosystem that thrived on moral panic, the reliable mechanism for turning out voters who might otherwise notice their wages stagnating and their healthcare costs soaring, all of this needed a new enemy. Enter trans people, whose very existence could be portrayed as an assault on nature itself, whose requests for basic dignity could be painted as demands for special rights, whose presence in sports or bathrooms or the military could be inflated into existential threats requiring immediate legislative action. It was perfect. The threat was not real, it never had been, but it was unfalsifiable and endlessly exploitable. Consider the timeline. In 2016, North Carolina passed its infamous bathroom bill, and suddenly every Republican politician in America had urgent opinions about bathroom usage, something none of them had thought to legislate in the preceding 2 centuries of American governance. By 2021, state legislatures had introduced over 100 bills targeting trans people, focusing on sports participation, healthcare, and bathroom access. By 2023, that number had exploded to over 500 bills. This was not a grassroots movement responding to constituent concerns. This was a coordinated campaign pushed by right-wing think tanks and activist organizations to manufacture a crisis where none existed. And what a successful manufacture it has been. While working-class Americans argued about whether trans girls should play on girls' sports teams, an issue affecting perhaps a few dozen young people nationwide, the Republican Party passed tax cuts that transferred $1.9 trillion to corporations and the wealthy. While voters were being told that drag queen story hours represented civilization's collapse, their wages remained stagnant, their healthcare costs soared, and their unions were systematically dismantled. While conservative media devoted countless hours to the supposed scandal of gender-affirming care for minors, provided in careful consultation with medical professionals to a tiny number of adolescents, private equity firms were buying up hospitals and nursing homes, gutting them for profit while care declined. This is not coincidence. This is the con. The genius of the strategy lies in its exploitation of legitimate human psychology. People are uncomfortable with rapid social change. Parents worry about their children. The dissolution of old certainties creates anxiety. These are real human experiences, and the Republican establishment has weaponized them with the precision of a guided missile. By focusing rage and fear on trans people, who pose no threat to anyone's marriage, anyone's job, anyone's way of life, they have successfully diverted attention from the actual assault on working Americans' prosperity and dignity. Consider what has happened to the American worker over the past 40 years. Productivity has soared while wages have stagnated. Healthcare costs have exploded while employer-provided benefits have evaporated. Pensions have disappeared, replaced by the Russian roulette of 401ks. Union membership has collapsed from 35% to 10% of the workforce. thanks in part to relentless Republican assault on collective bargaining. The wealth gap has reached Gilded Age proportions, with 3 Americans holding as much wealth as the bottom 50%. Life expectancy has declined for the first time in generations, driven by deaths of despair, suicide, addiction, alcoholism, among working-class whites in particular. These are catastrophes. These are the issues that should dominate political discourse. These are the crises that actually affect millions of American lives. But they are not the issues Republican politicians want to discuss, for the simple reason that on these issues they have nothing to offer but more tax cuts for billionaires and more deregulation for corporations. So instead they offer you a trans panic. They offer you the fiction that your declining fortunes result not from systematic wealth extraction by the oligarchy, but from the presence of trans women in women's prisons, or the provision of puberty blockers to teenagers, or the use of preferred pronouns in school. The cruelty is not incidental, it is central. By selecting as targets people who are already marginalized, already vulnerable, already suffering discrimination and violence, the Republican establishment ensures that defending them requires political courage. It ensures that standing up for trans rights will be painted as extremism, as out-of-touch coastal elitism, as betrayal of real Americans. It ensures that the conversation remains focused on cultural issues, where Republicans can claim moral authority, rather than economic issues, where their record is indefensible. The religious right's participation in this persecution is particularly nauseating. These are people who claim to worship a deity who commanded love of neighbor and protection of the vulnerable. These are people who profess to follow a teacher who spent his time with outcasts and sinners, who challenged the self-righteous, who defended those cast out by society, and yet they have found in trans people, many of whom are dealing with genuine medical complexities, who face violence and discrimination, who attempt suicide at heartbreaking rates, not an opportunity for compassion, but a target for demonization. Some among them literally advocate for trans people's deaths, calling them groomers and predators worthy of execution. If Christ were to return tomorrow, one suspects he would need a whip again, and the temple in need of cleansing would be found on cable news and in megachurch pulpits. But again, the theological hypocrisy is merely window dressing for the economic con. The religious right has long served as foot soldiers for an economic agenda that flatly contradicts any Christian teaching about wealth, greed, or care for the poor. They have blessed tax cuts that starve programs for the indigent while cutting capital gains taxes for billionaires. They have praised the destruction of social safety nets while building prosperity gospel empires. They have found biblical justification for every cruelty to the weak while offering theological cover for unlimited wealth accumulation by the strong. The trans panic is simply their latest service to Mammon, dressed up in the language of protecting children. What makes this moment particularly dangerous is that it works. The trans panic does motivate voters. It does drive turnout. It does generate donations. It does dominate news cycles. And since it works, it will continue and escalate until it no longer serves its purpose or until it is forcefully rejected. Already we see Republican candidates in 2024 centering their campaigns on trans issues, not that these issues affect more than a handful of their constituents, but rather that they have focus grouped well with anxious suburban parents. Already we see state legislatures considering increasingly draconian measures, not just bathroom bills, but criminalization of healthcare, removal of children from affirming parents, prohibition of discussion in schools. The cruelty escalates and the distraction is working. Meanwhile, as Americans argue about pronouns and bathrooms, the looting continues apace. Private equity firms continue their strip mining of American industry. Pharmaceutical companies continue their price gouging. Health insurance companies continue denying claims while recording record profits. Tech monopolies continue capturing entire sectors of the economy. The wealthy continue capturing a larger and larger share of national income while paying a smaller and smaller share in taxes. The oligarchy strengthens its grip while the working class suffers and dies. Literally dies in many cases from lack of health care, from addiction, from suicide, from the 1,000 cuts of economic precarity. This is the trade being offered. You can have your rage at trans people, your fury at drag queens, your panic about bathrooms and sports and pronouns. You can have the satisfaction of punishing people who make you uncomfortable, of reasserting traditional categories, of feeling that you are defending civilization itself against decadence. And in exchange, you will hand over your healthcare, your wages, your unions, your social security, your children's future, your planet's livability, your democracy itself. You will be robbed blind while you are distracted by the spectacle of persecution. Some bargain. The test of any political movement claiming to serve working people is simple. Does it make their lives materially better? Does it raise their wages, secure their health care, strengthen their bargaining power, tax the rich, regulate the predatory, protect the environment, ensure their children opportunities they lacked? By these measures, the Republican Party has been an abject failure for 4 decades. They have nothing to offer working Americans except tax cuts for the rich and the satisfaction of cruelty to the vulnerable, and so they offer cruelty wrapped in the language of tradition and faith and common sense. They offer a target for rage that is safely too marginalized to fight back effectively. They offer the oldest trick in the book. Look over there at those people who are different, those people who make you uncomfortable, those people who are changing things you thought were settled. Do not look up at the people actually robbing you. Do not notice the systematic transfer of wealth from your pocket to theirs. Do not pay attention to the fact that while you argue about bathrooms, they are buying their 4th yacht. Trans people deserve better than to be used as political props in this grotesque theater. They deserve the medical care they need, the legal protections everyone deserves, the basic dignity of being left alone to live their lives. They deserve, at minimum, not to be sacrificed to the political ambitions of cynical operatives and the economic interests of predatory oligarchs. But more than that, the American people deserve better than this con. They deserve a politics that addresses their actual concerns, their stagnant wages, their crushing debts, their lack of health care, their precarious futures. They deserve a politics that names their real enemies, not trans people using bathrooms, but billionaires using tax havens, not drag queens reading to children, but pharmaceutical executives pricing insulin out of reach, not teachers discussing gender identity, but private equity executives hollowing out their communities. What we have instead is a con that works precisely through its exploitation of discomfort with social change, a discomfort that is easier to indulge than confronting uncomfortable truths about American capitalism, about wealth inequality, about the systematic rigging of the economy in favor of the already wealthy. It is easier to blame trans people for the collapse of traditional certainties than to blame the economic system that has destroyed working-class communities and security. It is easier to rage at cultural change than to organize against economic predation. But ease and truth are not the same thing. The truth is that trans people are not your enemy. The truth is that while you have been told to fear them, you have been systematically robbed by people who smile while they pick your pocket. The truth is that this manufactured panic is succeeding in its purpose, keeping you angry at the powerless while the powerful laugh all the way to their tax-sheltered offshore accounts. One day perhaps Americans will tire of being marks in this long con. One day perhaps they will notice that their lives have not improved one whit from all this persecution of trans people, that their wages have not risen, their health care has not been secured, their futures have not been brightened by any amount of bathroom policing or sports league monitoring. One day perhaps they will ask why the people who told them to fear trans people also told them that unions were bad, that taxation was theft, that healthcare was socialism, that environmental protection killed jobs, that every policy that might actually improve their lives was impossible, while every tax cut for billionaires was essential. One day. But until that day, the con continues. The oligarchs prosper, the workers suffer, and trans people pay the price for a political strategy they never asked for, and a culture war they never started. It is a moral obscenity, a political travesty, and a con of breathtaking cynicism. And it is working exactly as intended.
So in the wake of the attempted assassination at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, one message rang out from Trump to basically every Republican at this point, which is, this is why we must build the ballroom. Lindsey Graham, always looking to be the leading sycophant among all of the sycophants. It's a very difficult task because there's so many to choose from. Jumped out front, pushing a bill now that would authorize $400 million in taxpayer funds to back Trump's ballroom, even though originally this thing was supposed to be privately funded, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Lindsey Graham here.
If you don't think $400 million of taxpayer money is a good investment to create a secure facility at the White House where the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Cabinet, and people from the public can come and, have a meal and gather without what happened Saturday, then I disagree. This is the number one job of the federal government is national security. The number one job of national security, I think, would be to protect the commander in chief and to have infrastructure under the ballroom that is very national security centric. So I don't think, just vote no. That's all I ask you to do is vote. I don't care how you vote. I want to vote. I want to see where is America on this. I'll bet you 90% of the people would love to have a better facility than the Hilton Hotel to make sure this crap never happens again. I can't tell you what to say on the Senate floor, but I've never seen it like this. There are people out there just one click away from picking up a gun or something else and trying to make America better by killing. You don't make America great by killing people you don't like.
I love, Sagar, his assertion here that a vote on the Senate floor would be somehow representative of the views of the American people. That's a very cute idea, not to mention the absurdity of him imagining that 90% of Americans at a time when gas prices are sky high, inflation is ticking back up, joblessness ticking up, mass layoffs are occurring, AI, we're at the war, all this stuff, that they would be like, yes, let's spend our taxpayer dollars on a gilded ballroom for Trump and his coterie of elites.
Let's remember that one of the only reasons I think that Trump was, quote, getting away with the ballroom is because it was privately funded. Now, I actually oppose that. I don't think any part of the White House complex should be privately funded. Why? Because I want Democratic input and say over every single thing that is built. That's part of the reason I oppose this entire project. This has made me much more of a NIMBY, by the way. This is why we need historical codes. Why we need historical trust. We need architecture review. We need zoning commissions. It's to keep bullshit like this and tackiness like the ballroom from ever being constructed. I would consider myself one of the chief anti-ballroom activists in the United States. Now, put this all together, though, is that they're using this incident to say, not only do we need the ballroom, but actually we need the ballroom to be paid for by the American taxpayer. And what he's saying is daring other people to vote against said ballroom. But, part of what is so preposterous about this entire thing, as I explained yesterday, for anybody who may not have tuned in, is the implication that any event that the President of the United States, now and forever, will speak at must be held at the White House? Because that would mean that the White House would have total and complete authority over who gets to enter and do what for things like the White House Correspondents Association, which is supposed to be a dinner celebrating the press and its adversarial relationship with the president. Now, it's not that, but I'm saying in spirit. So is the idea that the White House Correspondents' Dinner would always be held by the president? The president, this is the first one he's ever attended, Donald Trump. Every single other one he didn't attend previously, and that dinner was held with his absence. Okay, whatever. But let's think about this in the future. Every gala, you have to pay rent to the government so that the president can come? That seems pretty sick and weird, don't you think? And then maybe they would have a little bit of control over who comes in and who comes out. Or we could maybe just have a normal Secret Service barricade, which would cost $10,000 to $20,000 more a night, and then we're all good to go. How about that?
Yeah. I was thinking that too, like going back to our conversation with Joe Kent yesterday. I'm not a time traveler, guys, I promise. Not part of the time traveling conspiracy involved in all of this. But in any case, his point was like, hey, also another thing you could do is the Secret Service seems to be not doing such a great job here. You could improve that. You could stop elevating the very people who were at the scene of like the Butler assassination where, massive failure occurred to allow this guy on a rooftop with a, clear sight line at the president of the United States. That's an idea. So no, instead, we're also back to this, all of this discourse conversation, which you just can't take seriously really from anyone, but especially not from Republicans at this point. Trump literally threatened to murder an entire civilization, and we're supposed to take tips on etiquette and rhetoric guidance from the Republican Party, which had no problem with any of that, not to mention all of the other insane things that Trump says all the time. But just as an example of this, we had, and to show you how much appeal the ballroom has instantly found, the taxpayer-funded ballroom, from across the swath of the Republican Party. We have Eric Schmidt, who is a Republican senator from Missouri, also saying that now, because Democrats have been critical of ICE, that it is essential that taxpayers cough up $400 million for Trump's ballroom. Let's take a listen to that.
The Democrats have used rhetoric referring to ICE agents as the Gestapo, Trump's secret police. Yeah. They can't help themselves. Like, this is a real sickness. And what we're saying is this has to be addressed. At a minimum, we have to have a safe place to protect the President of the United States and the cabinet officials if they want to gather, or there's a state dinner, or a crowd more than like 100 people. But this is now, in order to appease the more radicalized base, the language that comes out on the Senate floor, I'm not talking about on like Morning Joe, like on the Senate floor. You guys are there, you hear this. This is well beyond what has been acceptable forever. And we were at where we're at.
It's entertaining to me. Yeah, this is why. This is why, because people said mean things about ICE on the Senate floor, not just on Morning Joe, Sagar, which is like the only, I guess that was his benchmark for like radical thought, was the panel over at Morning Joe. It's just, it's so preposterous. But I really want to lean into some of the things Lindsey Graham was saying about how, listen, take this to the American people.
I agree.
Run on this in the midterms. Go ahead. Tell them why they need to spend taxpayer dollars on this gilded ballroom for Donald Trump, and really make that case to them at a time when they are deeply dissatisfied with the economy, when we've been dragged into this war that virtually no one wanted. I think you should really prioritize this in your messaging to the American people, and let's have a democratic say over what direction they want to go in here.
And then we can scrutinize the funding. Let's put C4 up here on the screen. This is actually very interesting. To build his mammoth White House ballroom, President Trump last summer chose Maryland-based Clark Construction. Since then, Trump has repeatedly sung the company's praises, saying he wanted to refurbish projects all over Washington. In January, government contracts show the Trump administration secretly gave the company a no-bid contract to do another job at a sharply inflated price. The National Park Service wanted to repair 2 ornamental fountains in Lafayette Park. The Biden administration estimated it would cost them $3.3 million. Trump's government agreed to pay Clark $12 million to do it. Later, it added tasks and increased the contract to $17.4 million. The agency did so without considering offers from other firms, citing a rarely used urgency exception to normal open bidding procedures, usually meant for emergencies like war or natural disasters. Unlike the ballroom project, Trump says will be funded by private donations, the bill for the fountain repairs is being paid by the government. So again, this is for a fountain in Lafayette Park, which is just across the street from the White House. If you've ever visited in front of the iconic place, there's benches and other things that are there. And $20 million for a fountain renovation, which previously was estimated at $3.3 million. Now, listen, we all can understand inflation, but $17 million, I don't know about that. All right. Clark Construction, from what I know, at the very least, is I remember, because I went to GW, so they did all of the downtown, and we were always like, who is this firm? And so now I'm like, oh, okay, so you're now in with the Trump administration, you're making sure you're building the ballroom, and they're behind a lot of this. Look, I mean, construction is the ultimate racket, as Trump himself will tell you. All you have to do is read his book about the art of the deal, which is specifically about scheming and making sure how to get his Trump Tower and all of that built. So yeah, I'm starting to think that something above this might not be 100% above board. Just me. Well, I mean, everything's just, pay to play in this administration. Clark was willing to do the ballroom in the most grotesque way that Trump imagined. I think there was a different architecture firm that had originally been, hired. They had to be pushed down because they were like, this is monstrosity. So Clark is willing to, I guess, do whatever Trump wants them to do. And so in return, he's going to funnel them millions of dollars for, already probably $3 million, which was the original estimate, to rehab a couple fountains.
seems kind of crazy,
Yeah.
if we're being honest. And this article goes into detail about like, these aren't really like super complicated fountains. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. There are many more complicated fountains in the city of DC. These are pretty plain vanilla in terms of what needs to be done. But we understand these things always cost more than you think they're going to cost. So, okay, $3 million. What they did in the contract is they increased it for inflation and then by millions of dollars. Then they increased it again for inflation dollars. Then they just added on some random surplus, and I can't remember what sort of like, corporate jargon they used to justify. I mean, they just took it and added on millions of dollars in what appears to be a pure kickback. No one would be surprised either if someone in the family is getting a taste of this or whatever. But this is the way the entire administration operates, to connect it to the Iran war here, which I think basically everything is in some way connected to the Iran war. We just take it for granted that two of the people who are involved in these negotiations at the highest level, Witkoff and Kushner not even in the government. He's just Trump's relative. Both of them have massive, massive financial interests directly implicated in the Middle East. This is part of the problem with the negotiations to begin with. The Iranians think that Witkoff is just an Kushner is the Israeli stooge. Witkoff, they think, is just too stupid to really understand the technical details and is basically a waste of space there, which is why they've insisted, like, at least we need J.D. Vance there because he may have some intelligence and seems to not be completely psychotic. I don't know that their trust is really fairly placed there, but that's the way they feel about this. So in any case, this is par for the course for the way that this administration operates. Just to go back momentarily to the attempted shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, we have some new information this morning that it doesn't look like the alleged would-be assassin here actually was able to get off any shots. The latest reporting is that it was all the Secret Service firing that they may have accidentally hit one of their own. So again, to the idea of like, do we need a ballroom, or maybe we just need a Secret Service that's more competent? That seems to argue in that direction. Look, no shade at them. I know they have a tough job, but certainly not a job that I would be capable or able to perform successfully. But in any case, it's looking like there was, a bit of a chaotic scene here in apprehending this would-be assassin. And he appeared in court yesterday. It's also been interesting, Sagar, to get a look at CNN K-File dug into all of his posts on social media, of which there are thousands. And the ideological profile is kind of fascinating and terrifying.
Yeah.
He's like pro-Israel, pro-Ukraine. He thinks that Hassan Piker, he was literally like at the time when he was traveling across the country to try to assassinate the president, was posting about how Hassan Piker is too radical.
Yes.
Like, what? How was this making sense in your brain? He was objecting to whatever Hassan said about like petty theft. He thought that would collapse the social fabric and be a real problem for society as he's going about plotting this assassination attempt,
Yeah,
allegedly.
That's incredible. I mean, I think both are bad. I do think trying to commit high-level political violence seems pretty bad. I can't explain why it makes sense that the shooter is blue anon. Like, they actually are the most radical people who are on the planet. Everybody's always, concerned, but it really is the blue anon types, which are ready to rock and roll. I know this from having lived around them now for quite some time. But yeah, like you said, there's been some details. We have here the charges that were released against him by the FBI and by the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Let's take a listen. This is C6.
Today, the Department of Justice filed 3 federal charges in United States District Court against Cole Thomas Allen. The first count is attempted assassination of the President of the United States. This count is punishable by up to life in prison. The second count is interstate transportation of a firearm to commit a felony. This is punishable by up to 10 years in prison. And the third count is discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, which is punishable by a mandatory minimum term of imprisonment of 10 years, a maximum of life, and the 10 years is consecutive to any other sentence imposed.
So there you go. They've charged him multiple gun crimes, attempted assassination of President Trump. Very likely, he's looking at life in prison. That's probably what he's going to get. So that's where things stand up right now. I know we covered the conspiracy stuff yesterday. I know it's fun to delve into, but I think even now is a good example. If you go on the front, because everybody's like, oh, he wants to save his polls and all of that. And look, I criticize CNN and all that. I think they spend way too much time on the shooting. But, front page of the Wall Street Journal, it's UAE, OPEC, OpenAI misses revenue, Claudia Scheinbaum, Iran is flooded with oil. You have to scroll down to the bottom fold to get anything on the shooting. It's the same over at the Times and everywhere else. So if it was a psyop, it was one of the most poorly executed psyops of all time. I guess he did get his legislation on the ballroom.
Yeah,
However,
that's right.
again, if you want to talk about this from polling, trying to elevate the ballroom to the center of the conversation. I mean, I don't think Trump is that dumb, but look, maybe he doesn't care. So, for the conspiracy people out there, I guess you still have your fodder if we're considering the ballroom construction.
I couldn't believe, even Rand Paul was like, yes, let's fund the ballroom. I'm like, dude, aren't you supposed to be like against wasteful government spending? Didn't we have a whole thing at the beginning of this administration with Doge that was like, oh my God, we can't afford $10 million of research into pediatric cancer or whatever. And now we're like, we must. It is the most essential task of the federal government. And this is like the language they were literally using. It is the most essential task of the federal government to build this ballroom. We will have this ballroom. I don't know. Wild time. So if it was a false flag and the goal was to push the ballroom, in that way, Soccer, you have to admit, it would have been a successful
Yeah,
plot.
I guess. I mean, it seems pretty stupid to me, but yeah. All right. Keep believing what you want to believe. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show. Help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
We're joined now by Branko Marcetic. He is a staff writer at Jacobin. He's the author of Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden, and is out with a truly fantastic deep dive into Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with Peter Thiel in Jacobin. Jacobin cannot recommend this piece highly enough. This is D1. We can put the tear sheet up on the screen. You absolutely must go check it out over at Jacobin. The headline here, Jeffrey Epstein encouraged Peter Thiel's political journey. So, Branko, let's just start with the highlights. After spending so much time piecing together these emails between Peter Thiel and Jeffrey Epstein, of which there are many, what can you tell us about how close the relationship was and why? Over what types of issues did they bond?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. They were extremely close. There's some people that I've written about in the context of Epstein, billionaires who knew him, who, they say, well, just because they were mentioned in the emails by Epstein doesn't mean that they actually had any kind of relationship with him. You can safely say that is not the case with Peter Thiel. Thiel is all over these emails. They are communicating very frequently over the course of years. They're having phone calls, they're having meetings face-to-face. Epstein is introducing him to people that he seems to think will be particularly useful or influential for Thiel to know. Epstein is also showering him with all kinds of gifts. He's offering to fly him to his island in his helicopter. He's offering him at one point $50 million to $100 million to invest. He's giving him tax advice. He's in turn soliciting investment advice from Thiel. Thiel at one point introduces Epstein to some of his Vala co-founders, and he suggests to put in $10 million to $20 million into a new fund they're starting. At one point, Epstein even suggests, Thiel can use one of his top sleep doctors in New York. He says, I want you to stay alive. So it was a very close relationship, and the kinds of things they bonded over. I mean, there's a variety of things that they talked about, but I think the most pertinent thing to me in looking through his emails is the way that Epstein seems to be very interested in Thiel's kind of budding involvement and interest in politics and geopolitics, and how he seems to want to develop and encourage that by kind of introducing him to a wide variety of influential players around the world and in the context of the U.S.
What I think is so interesting about Epstein and who he was connected to, and also Thiel, aside from the obvious, is both of these guys were kind of on the pioneer of where the kind of Davos world was not even the more extreme weird wing of the Davos world almost was headed, particularly when it comes to kind of eugenics, when it comes to mass surveillance and deploying technologies like Palantir that Thiel was developing to usher in kind of new world, also Bitcoin and AI. Like Epstein, Thiel, like they were both talking about that stuff so much earlier, than either the public or even kind of other people in their set. So what do you make of that kind of the ability that they had to see where their kind of social set was heading, and also to kind of drive it in that direction a little bit?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned cryptocurrency, because that is a big theme, I think, in Epstein's emails in general, but particularly with his relationship with Thiel. Epstein kind of suggests in one early email when he's trying to get in touch with Thiel, and by the way, he is really, before they become friends, he is really trying to meet Thiel and to forge a connection with him. I think I counted something like 10 different times over the course of 2 years that he is emailing people trying to set up some kind of meeting with him. And he says that one of the things that is interesting him, that he hopes that he can connect with Thiel over, is this idea of creating a new financial system, an alternative financial system. Some of that sounds a bit silly. He kind of envisions Facebook being the kind of basis for a new financial system where you trade favors instead of currency. But when you read through the emails, it's clear that Epstein's interest in cryptocurrency was a big part of this. And I think he hoped to use the Thiel connection to try and usher this new world into existence. I think there's another aspect where, the fact that these guys are both incredibly wealthy and that they kind of feel themselves at a remove from the rest of humanity, I think both gives them the kind of impulse to embark on what might look to us like almost wacky schemes, but ones that they're very serious about, and ones obviously have very far-reaching implications, in terms of the ideas of kind of extending lifespan and kind of going beyond the limits of normal human existence. I would also point to, this didn't make it into the piece, but there's a exchange that they have where it's very brief. Epstein asks Thiel, as he does many times, whether he's going to come to New York. And Thiel responds with something like, I don't have any interest in coming to the zoo this week or something. And Epstein replies, well, sometimes it's fun to look at animals. I think that exchange kind of betrays a certain way that these guys look at the rest of the world. They're so far removed from everyone else that I think they kind of view the world and the rest of humanity as almost kind of a petri dish for themselves to kind of play around in and reforge in the vision that they see fit.
Yeah, a couple of other things that stood out to me. I mean, there's a lot that stood out, but a couple of other things. They seem to be trying to, or Epstein seems to try to be brokering relationships between Thiel and the intelligence community. Also, people like ultra wealthy businessmen like Tom Barak, if I'm remembering correctly, who's our current ambassador to the UAE. Or he was UAE. Now he's
wasn't in Turkey, but
Turkey.
Lebanon.
Yeah, but he was Trump won UAE, right?
He was doing illegal lobbying
for UAE.
He was indicted for it.
Right. So he was sort of an ambassador in one sense or the other. But he's trying to. I can't tell if you. I'm curious if you read it this way as well, Branko. That he's almost trying to like curry favor with Epstein by doing favors for him. It seems like he's going out of his way to try to help Thiel, that Epstein's going out of his way to try to help Thiel make all of these introductions. And then he's advising him on his speech at the RNC. It just knowing how much Epstein hates Trump and communicates how much he hates Trump to others. His relationship with Steve Bannon is much kind of more frank about that. Whereas with Thiel, it's almost like he's trying to imply to Thiel that he's fully on board with Trump. There's just some weird undercurrents.
My sense from looking at probably at this point thousands of these emails is that Epstein did have this falling out with Trump, and he was very disdainful towards Trump. He did not think very highly of him. But I think he understood that Trump was obviously a very influential and increasingly powerful person.
And could be bought in some ways.
Yeah. And I think Epstein understood that it was probably in his interests to have some kind of in with Trump, or at least his administration. And Thiel, I think, was his in. I mean, when Epstein finds out that Thiel is a Trump delegate, that's when he starts sending him these emails trying to help him kind of increase his influence within Trump circles, trying to advise him on how to, not piss off Trump, basically, and get himself kind of kicked out of the inner circle. I mean, he tells him, hey, I heard that you met with Tom Barack. And he basically says to him, I can, make that meeting happen. You should know him. If you can kind of have your advice listened to by him, you'll be able to increase your influence within Trump's world. Later on, he brokers a meeting between them. He reads a BuzzFeed article where Thiel is quoted saying some unflattering things about Trump, and he tells him, "Hey, be careful. Trump is very vindictive. You don't want to anger him and kind of get kicked out of the clubhouse." And sure enough, from what I could see, after that email is sent, Thiel does not say anything negative about Trump after that. He's very careful to always say positive things. So I think there was a realization by Epstein, similar to the interest he took in Steve Bannon, where he similarly tried to introduce him to many powerful and influential people. He gave him advice and so on and so forth. I think he realized these two guys are going to be important power players. They're going to be influential within the Trump presidency and whatever comes after it. And it's probably better for me to have a good relationship with them and to have a kind of in. The intelligence side of things, or some of the other people that he introduced it to, I think there's a similar thing going on. The names that come up when Epstein was trying to introduce Thiel to people, includes Bill Burns, who became the CIA director under Biden. At the time, he was a State Department official. They include Kathy Rumler, who was the Obama White House counsel once upon a time. He says to her at one point when he's trying to get her to meet Thiel, you should bring some of your spook friends. So Epstein seemed to have a particular interest in kind of connecting Thiel to the world of intelligence. And of course, what has happened since then, Thiel is very much deep in the world of intelligence. Epstein introduced Thiel to Ehud Barak. Thiel now has this major partnership with the Israeli military. At the same time, Thiel also, his companies have increasingly aligned themselves with this kind of interventionist, pro-war side of the political spectrum in the United States. Whereas Thiel used to be, at the time that he was had first met Epstein, he was someone who described himself as a non-interventionist, and he was against the U.S. fighting all these wars. So, whether it's what role Epstein played in it, we can only speculate. But Epstein's desire to have a Thiel that's more politically involved and less averse to war, I think, has worked out for him, even if he didn't live to see it happen.
And well, Bronco, great reporting. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I encourage everybody to check out his piece, Bronco March-Teach of Jacobin Magazine.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show. Help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Of course, if you want to support the show, you can do so by going to www.patreon.com and getting a membership for as little as $3 a month. Again, that's www.patreon.com/The Darrell McClain Show. The Jerome McClain Show is fully listener-supported, independent media that won't lead you to tribalism. Get a membership and support independent media at www.patreon.com/The Jerome McClain Show.